native prairie, which is pasture land, is native prairie, so there can't be a wind turbine on any pasture ground. It's all on farmland. So it really changed things in the whole scope of things. 6 years ago, it was like, oh, this is gonna be built on all these acres, I mean, you know, but no, they can't. So the wildlife really put a lot of restrictions on it. And we all know that. I mean, what can you do with wildlife? You can't drain, you can't do anything up in our area. So I'm just, you know, I mean, as far as acres, there's not a lot to actually do it on. So it all of a sudden changed the footprint of where they're building them.
Now we almost should have the wind tower people here. Is there any situations where they needed or it would be just conducive because of roads or whatever to build it closer to someone so the person who has that, I'm making this up now, has this 20-acre farmstead is getting paid even though he doesn't have a tower on his land? Does that exist or not?
That's what a
Yes.
variance would do.
That's what the
Yeah,
variance is.
they have that agreement.
So they're saying if it was a mile setback from, which I'm just gonna use his property.
Right.
And they'd have to come in and do a variance, that's where the landowner gets his chunk, but then they have an opportunity, if they would agree that, okay, you could be a half mile, they're gonna pay him so
They're gonna
much, so
pay
they,
him for that.
for putting it there.
For the devalued property.
I hear about money every time I come to a commissioners meeting and township and water board. And what you're talking about is future money coming into the county. If property is devalued, doesn't that mean less money coming into the county? 10 years down the road? 10 years isn't that far away. It's something to think about. If it's gonna be 40% of devalued property,
That's pure speculation. Yeah.
right,
And that's
but
what
they
Texas-
are going off of some in the past
Well-
of what's happened.
And then, go ahead, Levi.
So what I was gonna say is, the wind people, they came to township meetings, they came to county meetings, whatever.
Right.
They've had their pamphlet that says it's projected at a this much runtime, it's projected at this much dollars per megawatt, and this could be between the two counties. Now, I don't know if they take on X amount of towers and divvy it out by percentage to each county, I don't know how that works, I'm not speculating that. But what I would say is, the numbers that they're talking, in my opinion, are gross numbers. It's like when you're hauling grain to the elevator before the dockage or before the shrink on the calves. So I really think that if you guys are really looking at dollars, now, in my opinion, looking at dollars coming into the county is the wrong way to look at this.
I don't think we're looking at that at all.
No,
We're looking at it to keep everybody happy.
I know, but I'm just saying, like, if the county says that they need money or whatever, I think that's the wrong way to look at this. But talk net money. What you're getting with what it's gonna cost, you look at what's in between.
Well, I think we can't see. Who else had a comment?
Well, I was just gonna add to this lady's point up here, when you went and said 40% is a big speculation. The wind industry has actually done studies out there, and they say they even figure you will lose 10% on your property right off the bat from that wind farm. And they don't really discuss how close the towers are, just that you're in that wind farm footprint. And 10%, you know, that adds up real quick. And that goes what she was saying again, that's gonna come out of the county coffers sooner or later, because that's less property values. Well, it should, it doesn't mean it'll happen, but.
We have to make a decision on this tonight.
We don't have to, but
Any decision we make is certainly not a final decision, so.
No.
I think we owe it to put something forward.
we need something forward tonight because it goes in the paper and then 2 weeks from now, we have one of these deals and then we make
We
the
only got
decision.
2 townships from Wells County here tonight. And we're gonna make a decision for the whole county.
But there's also the future ramifications if they should want to build in someplace
Well, that's why we need more Wells County.
Well, and that's what, if we would make a motion tonight and put it in there, we'd have to have another meeting
Correct.
before it would go to the county commissioner, so that, to me, that's when you'd probably get more people coming out and we'd hear what's going on. So it's not final,
We had
you
people
know.
here tonight who have a vested interest in it.
Right.
This really is a countywide thing.
You know, I look at this as a person, and I'm gonna put my own spin on it, but I've been on enough boards too where you have to be able to separate personal things in that. I don't like driving across the state of North Dakota and seeing a bunch of wind farms. I don't. I understand it. Being on the board, I wanna hear each side and what is in the best interest of our people in Wells County. You know, and to take that separate from that, so it's to look at it, what is the vested interest of the patrons of Wells County? Should a homeowner that only owns 20 acres and has that thing set close to them, should they have something to win on that? Part of me says yes.
I agree.
You know, I get that, because if I had a farmstead that we wanted to live out in the country and we got 20 acres and I put our hard earning money towards that and now it's devalued, that stinks. I get that. I get people that want to have the wind farms and to do that, but okay, where is that? And when people want to come in, do they have to pay a little bit more to do it, to have that variance if we have it set back half a mile, whatever that number would be, so everybody has a little piece to it? I get that. It is a hard decision. Who knows what wind energy is going to do, if you believe in it or you don't believe in it. I mean, I think we have all sides of that. But I think you said the zoning commission here, we have to really take a look at what is in the best interest of the people of Wells County. You know, and I do think, let's make a decision tonight of what that is. We're gonna have to have another meeting. That's gonna spur interest, I think, of more people coming in the Wells County area. This is what I feel. And those people that would be maybe affected. And right now, they may not think they're gonna be affected, but hopefully word would get out that, what are your feelings if it does come further into Wells County?
And to add to what Warren is stating, all of the townships are, mostly got some back, but all the townships did get the exact same letter that all of you guys did, so they are aware that this would be talked about tonight. It's their decision whether they were here or not.
You know, and they're not going to be as concerned because it's not in their backyard.
Right.
Right.
You know, sadly, people in Hertzfield aren't gonna be as concerned about this issue
But-
as,
They were in 09.
well, they all
Today-
were in 09.
Okay, so with that said, like, we're a small part of Wells County, we're up in the corner. I get that, but,
You're a very important part though.
but it's, I mean, just think of this, that if there's any future expansion or if there's another wind farm or anything like that, if you grant it for one, that's probably it's gonna be precedence for the rest of them.
Correct.
So
Yeah,
everybody
that's a good
can look at this as their own, even though it doesn't affect that. That's just,
Yeah, I think looking at the big power line going through here, all of Wells County can be, you know, has wind development.
Correct. Because of that transmission.
Well, and when that transmission line came through on your conditional use permit, you added conditions, especially to have neighbors and owners and the Dakota get along and have all the easements approved and signed before you would even consider approving a conditional use permit. There was that aspect as well.
Had to be percentage.
I don't think it was all of it.
No, it wasn't.
Okay.
It
I'm
wasn't.
pretty sure it was a percentage.
It was a
But
percentage.
it was quite a bit more than what they had presented at that meeting.
Like I said, the wind tower people should be, you can ask me this question, I got one more. Obviously, the wind tower people, and I'm not pro one way or the other, I'm trying to stay impartial here. They want everyone to be happy also,
Yeah,
and
I mean-
if there's someone has a 20-acre farmstead that's adamantly opposed to it, can they be convinced of staying away? Or are they gonna plot down no matter what. They don't
I
care.
think the biggest thing is negotiation, you know, I mean, as far as some people are totally against it, they're not gonna negotiate with somebody that, you know, says, I want it further away, can we talk about it? That's different.
All right. Do you like to comment?
I was just gonna say, you know, they want everybody to be happy. Your comment, wouldn't they want everybody to be happy, the wind people?
Well, they might not. They might be concerned about the bottom line. I don't know.
So can I share with you our experience last summer? So I do not have any land signed up in the footprint. My family doesn't have any land signed up in the footprint. Way back when, my dad put in a little bit of money. It was a fundraising drive. Maybe it was $500 or $1,000, somewhere in there, into the We Wind entity. So he did that, and then got to thinking, seeing what it could do to the land. The individual dad decided not to participate. So last summer, maybe you guys have seen this or not, but they had survey crews out and they were trying to locate all the section line markers and stuff like that. They had guys running around on a side by side and marking out all these poles. Well, up in Grandfield Township, I was cutting hay, and there's this pickup on the road right at the end of the mailbox, and it's like, well, who the heck's over there? Now, our land is posted electronically, which means for hunting and fishing trespasses, and it's posted with steel signs, which is for all other types of trespass, criminal trespass. The surveyors were down out in the pasture, and I go over there. You aren't supposed to be here. You have no authority. Who are you? They wouldn't tell me who they were. And then I said, who do you work for? And all they'd say is the name on the side of the pickup. Well, I'm not stupid. I knew who they worked for. They were doing survey work for this wind project. So I told them, and I asked them what they were doing. Well, we're shooting utilities. Well, shooting utilities is apparently survey shorthand for we're marking the power poles. So we happened to have a friend that worked for Northern Plains, and we called him up and said, did you assign the easement for power pole access to anybody? They said, no, they did not. And I said, does your easement mean anybody can come? And they said, no, we can assign it for crews to check for rotten poles or whatever, but that's about it. And we always let you know. So I called Lucas, who's the project landman, is what I call him. And I kind of read him the riot act. He said, they aren't supposed to be on your land. They were told to stay off your land. That is it. And I said, all right, well, you make it well known. There was 2 crews of surveyors. It wasn't the next day we caught the other crew of 3 out in standing crop on some of our other land. Now it was blatantly obvious, and maybe the wind people wants people to, maybe the wind company wants people to be happy and everything. But what they did is their subcontractors are just out there doing whatever, and they aren't held to account. So we actually called the sheriff, and the sheriff was looking for them. They went back to Minnesota. There was a text message sent out about my family from Kent about what went on. And that there just destroyed the whole community. Somebody that goes to the same church and lives 6 miles away couldn't communicate, couldn't figure out what's wrong, it destroys communities. That's my thing. We got to have a community left when this is done.
I sent out a message to tell some of the other board members to handle this. Obviously, I made a mistake, and I vouch for making mistakes. People do it, so that's all I'm gonna say.
Okay, board, what would you like to do?
Well, Stan, if we make a motion here tonight, whatever it is, how does that go through the next meetings, and what power does that motion make, and what parliamentary procedure do we have to do to reverse it?
We're only,
All right.
Yeah.
So today.
no lawyers here, but
So.
act like one.
I don't wanna.
Or not.
So when you make a motion tonight, it's not set in stone. What'll happen is it'll go and be rewritten for a first run of the ordinances. It'll get put in the paper.
First reading.
Yeah, the first reading, and then You could have, in 3 weeks, let's say, you'd have another public hearing where you would read what was written to the public, you'd have more discussion like tonight. At that point, if there's no,
Objection.
objection, thank you. If there's no objection to it, then you can say, okay, this is the final reading tonight, and then it goes to the commission. It does not get put in place, and it has no bearing on anything with the ordinance until the commission would approve it, and it be recorded with the recorder's office.
If the commission did not approve it, what happens then?
Start over, or it would revert back to what is written.
I don't think that anything that, if a motion is made here, seconded and approved here tonight, I don't mean anything. It's a starting point of a discussion.
That's right.
And that could get changed at the next meeting,
Right. And then
before
it's just
it would go.
If we drastically modified something at the next meeting, would you then have to
Have another meeting.
in a public comment period and another meeting,
Yes.
correct?
Until it's all agreeable.
Before it would go to the county commission.
Yes.
So if we do something different here tonight, how does that affect the project that they're working on?
They have not filed for a conditional use permit, so at this point, it doesn't affect them at all. It will when they come for a conditional use permit, but they already are going to need a variance for the 75 feet to be closer to the ground, because we have 75 feet, they want 50.
I don't wanna put anybody in a box here, but it would seem to be based on the discussion that we've heard here tonight, the input that we've had. Probably nobody gonna be in favor of anything less than 2640. Would that be fair to say? And I would say anywhere from 2640 to 5280 is what we're talking about. Would that be fair to say?
Yes.
Okay. So we're looking at anywhere from a half a mile to a full mile.
So
With variance.
just from Valhalla's standpoint, from the map I was given, I think the 5280, I think would affect one tower. But I can't speak for Bremen Township.
That's assuming they couldn't get a variance.
Right.
How does Brennan feel?
Just because you go big doesn't mean you're against energy. Let it work out with variances within the local. That's where I'm at.
But if you gotta get a variance, what difference does it make if it's half a mile or a mile? I mean, might as well set it at a mile.
Well, I think the difference, the way I look at it, let's just say if we set it at a mile and they have to do a variance, that 20-acre homeowner can get something in there. Also, they have to negotiate with them just as well.
At a mile.
At a mile. So maybe they could agree on it being a half a mile away, but at least they have some say in it. They have some input, because their property is gonna be affected by that.
You know, I understand, that's why I say why
Yeah.
not make it a mile, you know, because, you know, you're gonna have to negotiate.
Mhm.
One way or the other.
Think about all the townships that
Well,
you're gonna represent here.
yeah, I was gonna ask a question about the two wind towers in your township, but that's really a moot point, because we're doing this for the whole county. I mean, does it affect, at least in the near term, does it affect farmsteads around the two that they're gonna put up? I mean, if they were,
So let the variance work. If you would go with the mile setback, let the variances work within.
I will make a motion to have the setback at 5,280 feet or a mile with variance.
okay? Is that fair enough motion, variances between,
So, excuse me, I put motion was made to update the setback to 5,280 feet or 1 mile with an option for a variance, with an option for a variance was made by Bob, seconded by.
is that clear?
And I think so, and then, it can be updated in here too before publishing it.
All right, I'll second.
All right, Dan, any other comments or discussion? Richard?
Is that, if they, well, you got very, you can negotiate, but does that put the kibosh to the project, or will they, can they work on
I can't answer that, I'm very small, I'm just on the local board, so.
what I mean?
How many million
does it stand to generate for White Wells and Eddie at this point in time?
Well, we're not doing this for Eddie, we're not doing it for Valhalla, but in all reality, we're doing it for 2 wind towers.
Yep.
Today. And we're doing this for the whole county, don't be wrong.
And to me, it's the 2 wind towers there, but it's what the future may come.
Right,
Amen.
right.
It's the future that we have to look at, because
But to answer Richard's, it won't kill the project, because we're only dealing with 2 towers today.
Yeah.
With our,
Probably be 3, there'll be 1 in Valhalla too.
oh, our,
3, I mean,
very
just to be
few,
clear.
let's put that out.
Now, I have a brother-in-law who's in wind, whatever.
You talk to them?
Anyway, he was in the western part of the state, and they went to a mile variance, and basically that killed the wind thing in that county. So there won't be any wind.
Well, I'm curious too, what happens out of Animals, because that project got killed.
I mean, they won't, I just got a text, I asked them, he said, unless there's not very many homes, say you can get waivers from landowners that they want the wind farm, but no company will start a project depending on a bunch of waivers, each homeowner controls too much area. Okay. So, I mean, I'm not pro or against, I'm just saying, if you make a decision on a mile, there probably won't be any wind turbines in the farm.
But this is a get us to the next
Right.
go around.
Right.
And whether it's 3960 or 2640, I don't think anybody here was in favor of less than half a mile, but.
I think we can all agree that 1250 here and some of that stuff is way too close.
And when they did this one originally, it was due to a possible wind tower down in the Hertzfield area in 09.
Right.
And Hertzfield voting area, but they were much smaller than what they're proposing here.
Amen. These are the biggest terrestrial towers on the planet.
All right, motion and second, any other discussion or comments? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Carried. All right. Last item.
What about the height off the ground?
That's already in there.
We already have
Okay,
it in at 75 feet
okay.
or 50.
we have.
No, it's at
No, it's
75.
75. They need a variance. Right. That's 75. Okay, lastly, quickly, you had the handout for data centers, and it's a template that comes from the Association of Counties, and what do you want to do with this? Go on in. And add it to our zoning ordinance, or just want to look at it. There too, there's chances of something like that coming in Wells County or living in Wells, however. People of Ellendale thought that at one time too, and now there's a big deal down there.
It needs a lot of power. I don't know, I think that a big power line, I don't know if they can have there, the southern part of the town.
It takes a lot of water also, right, and power.
I don't know about water.
I know it's a lot of power, a lot of power.
Just a reminder for those that came to the meeting a little late, there is a sign-up sheet, make sure that you sign it, please.
Where's the sign up sheet at? Everybody signed this?
Everybody, is there a sign up? Okay, where is the sign up?
It's right here.
I haven't signed it.
Make sure everybody signs it. This is an open meeting, so.
Nobody's allowed to leave.
This be added to our next agenda or our next meeting then?
Can this? Good question. We could.
I'm just looking through this, and before you know it, you're gonna have so many different measurements in here. So I'm looking at this as 4/10 of a mile. What? I understand understand there's a lot of noise with this too.
For these data centers, yep.
And that just, pretty soon you're attached to that booklet because everything's a different measurement. So,
And what you can do is, since I just gave it to you tonight, knowing that we'll have another public hearing, if you guys wanna take it home and kind of digest it, that's perfectly fine as well.
What are your wishes?
Well, do we want a meeting on data center and wind towers, or you just wanna have the next meeting on? wind
Well,
towers?
something like this, I
Well,
think.
and the next meeting is going to include all three that we've already been through. So the wind towers, fee schedule, and
Yeah, we didn't decide anything tonight, it's all next time also. Yeah, the fees and the township setbacks are also for public hearing in 2 weeks or 3 weeks. What do you think? No, the data centers, I mean, you can do that, but obviously.
based on your conversation, do you have anything that you could even begin to recommend to us? Because if not, then we probably gotta walk away from here tonight with this.
I would digest it and think about it before doing anything, simply because I haven't had time to read through the information that I sent out or know anything about it.
Maybe contact Dickey County, get down there, right?
Yeah.
Dickey County, and they would have an ordinance, because they have a big
Right.
data center.
And I know they were
being
having to
constructed.
update a lot of it.
So does Stutzman County,
Stutzman also? Okay,
right north of Jamestown.
that's good to know. If you could do that.
Yeah, I will try.
I just heard when that whole deal came in, there was a lot of stuff that was all cut and dried before a lot of people even found out what was going on. And it's hard to keep ahead of these big companies, because they come in and with a wave of wires and they've got everything cut and dried, and by the time the local people find out what's going on.
And sometimes it doesn't matter nearly as much as what you want, as what the state of North Dakota wants. So when South Dakota, when their government took on this, CO2 pipeline and killed it, it wasn't the township that did that, it wasn't the cities that did that, it was their state legislature and their governor who did that. So if the state of North Dakota really wants something to happen, I don't think there's anything we're gonna be able to do about it. And follow the Red River Valley water supply pipeline. I mean, we don't really have a say.
And that was referred in the state of South Dakota, and it was, that pipeline stopped in the state of South Dakota by a referral of the voters.
Yes.
Well, and their legislature just evidently just acted on that. So, but that being said, I don't think the state of North Dakota is gonna be advocates for a wind farm, but they might be for a data center. They might be for a whole lot of other things.
And you're right, it's good to be proactive in these things, to have something in place before it falls on your lap and say, gee, now what do we do? So,
Is there any wording we could use that any data center would have to come to the zoning board before making it?
Well, because it's not in our zoning, they already have.
We have that in.
application.
well, it sounds like just too much information, we should bring it up at our next meeting,
Yeah,
and in
I'll
the meantime,
I'll
if you
try
can
to
find.
send out information. This next month is all equalization, so I can't guarantee that I will know any more next time than I know that tonight, so.
I'll call Dickey County.
And
Let's know
and it's not
tomorrow
hard to send an email, but, and sometimes it's.
Well, Dickey and Stutzman, right? All right, anything else in those 4 items? If not, Warren, what did you have?
You should approve the minutes from last meeting.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. Is there a motion to approve the minutes of the last meeting? Moved by Lauren, is there a second? Second, by Faith. All those in favor say aye. Opposed? Carried. Motion adjourned.
So moved.
Carried. Done. Don't need a second. Thank you all. for coming.